are good to go. So welcome again. Welcome to Barcoding Inc.'s 2021 Executive Briefing. I'm Jody Costa, VP of Marketing for Barcoding and one of your hosts for today's time together. For those who are new to Barcoding, we are a supply chain automation and innovation company dedicated to helping organizations like yours be more efficient, accurate, and connected. Together with Technologies and Ingram Micro, we're the partner you can turn to for some of your big business challenges around mobile technology, labeling and compliance, and data capture. So, of course, this being 2020 and all, which I don't have to tell you all what that means, we do have one small change to report for today's session. We have Shane Snyder, president of Barcoding Inc., who will be subbing in for Carrie Corbin. So we will absolutely miss Carrie, but we are going to be sure to feature her in a next video event coming in January. And we're very grateful to Shane for sharing his time and perspective with us today. Now, this executive briefing is your time to get your questions answered and to get all the info that you need to be prepared to start 2021 correctly. We have three experts for you in Shane, Dina, and Carl, and I, for one, can't wait to get the conversation going. You can use the Q&A function within the Zoom platform to ask your questions. We will get to as many as we can, and we'll certainly email you if we don't get to your questions on air, but we will do our best to kind of monitor that Q&A and add those into the conversation as we can. So without further ado, I want to invite Matt Cunningham, our VP of Sales, to join me now on screen. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Jody, how are you?
I'm doing good, and hopefully everyone appreciates our matching backgrounds. So Matt will be the co-host today. So he's going to get started with our first interview. So Matt, I'm going to have you take it away, and Shane, if you want to go ahead and join us on screen, that would be awesome. Great, there we go. All right, well, I'm going to pop off video. Matt, I'm going to leave this in your very capable hands, and we will kick this off.
Great, thanks, Jody. Appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate everybody giving us some time today, and we're looking forward to having a great discussion here with three great experts within the marketplace today. And so, with today, I'm excited to spend some time with the president of Barcoding. Long time no talk, Shane. Welcome. Appreciate you giving us some time and some perspective on how you see things in the market today. So, with that, Shane, could you maybe just tell everybody who's on today a little bit about your role and responsibility within Barcoding today?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thanks, Matt. Thanks for everybody for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate it. And as Jody said, we'll have Carrie back as our resident expert very shortly. And I'm sure our next video chat that we do will include Carrie. But I am the president of Barcoding. I've been with this company for about 10 years. And my responsibilities are probably no surprise, very similar to what we think as a president. So I have responsibility, number one, for our employees and their experience within Barcoding and with the rest of the business community that they deal with. And then also be responsible for our clients out there and making sure that we're structuring things to do the things the right way for our clients that are out there. And then last but not least, our good partners like a Zebra or our friends from Ingram that are on the phone with us today. So make sure that we're nurturing those relationships as well, because what we do know, and it's kind of beyond the cliche, what we do know is that if we're going to have an impact in our clients' experience or our employee experience or within our social communities, that we can't do this thing alone, right? It's one of those deals where we all have to work together, and anywhere from things like this afternoon where we're sharing thoughts and ideas and concepts and insights, hopefully, to actually executing on things to bring these things that we talk about from kind of a concept into reality. So, general responsibilities are present. So responsibility for all the functions of an organization, from sales to operations, finance, engineering, etc. So They don't let me write any code, which is probably really wise, but I certainly get involved with all aspects of the business.
That's great. Thanks for that that recap, Shane. This has been a year like probably no other years for a lot of us that are on the call today. It's been a year of change and a year of challenges. And what are you seeing across customers and employees today that they're concerned about around just the overall state of business out there today, and more importantly, you know, how they think about their supply chain today?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's certainly been a year like no other, and just because it's been such a fun year, we figured we'd add another day to it, make it a leap year, right? Because 365 days of enjoying 2020 isn't enough. We have to have 366 of it. So soon enough, my birthday will come at the end of this month, and we'll roll over to 2021. I think we'll have a different year in 2021 and moving forward. So I'm going to set aside kind of the Corona response and the COVID talk a little bit. You know, I think we all hear a lot about that. Underlying that conversation, and I'm not minimizing that as an important part of the conversation, but underlying that are the basic business drivers that existed before we got into this unusual year, and certainly we'll face on 2021 or 2021 plus. So in general, you know, when I talk to business leaders out there, partners, and more specifically customers and industry leaders, you know, they're focused on the basics, right? It always gets down to the easy stuff or the basic things, right? We talk to the folks in operational roles out there, and you know, labor was a big concern coming into 2020. And has been for the last 5 to 10 years in the marketplace, kind of a scarcity of labor, being able to source labor in terms of recruitment, retain labor. You know, there's so many people, especially people in my position, you know, like the value of the company is the employee, right? It's kind of cliche, but you know, it's actually true, right? Just sharing a little insight here. Right, it's actually the strength of the company are the people that work within that organization. So, you know, operationally, people have been very concerned about how do we source, how do we retain labor, how do we, one of the phrases I use around this place isn't let's do more with less, but how do we do more with the same, right? So how do we increase our effectiveness as an organization while being more efficient by doing more with the same, right? And that goes from, you know, it starts with recruiting and retaining the right people. It transforms into how do I go about onboarding them and training them, not only initially, but, you know, one of the foundations that we have within our organization, you'll hear me talk about it a lot, is how do we help the people that we work with every day, the people that have committed to being part of our organization, how do we help them invest in themselves? How do we help them grow both professionally as well as personally? You know, we've got a lot of long tenured people that are on the phone with us here today, or on the call with us here today. So how do we help them invest with people? So, you know, it all starts with labor from an operational standpoint. You know, how do I adjust labor based on fluctuations in volume? That might be fluctuations that are driven by seasonality. You know, we're in that holiday season, and retailers and 3PLs are, you know, I don't think if anybody's driving anywhere anymore and actually leaving their house, right? I don't think you can drive more than 2 miles and not see a Amazon Prime truck or a FedEx ground truck or a UPS truck or a United States Postal Service truck, right? So, you know, very certainly a big seasonality going on right now, and a real requirement for labor out there. And so how do I staff on a temporary basis? How do I onboard those people that have effectiveness? You know, I talked about labor. Training is a big component of that, right? So how do we make sure that we're teaching and relaying and building those skills in our people so that when they're interacting both internally as well as externally with our customers, how are they effective, right? And it might, you know, on the surface, you might think, well, geez, it's really important to be effective so we have a better customer experience. Well, that's certainly true, but I got to tell you, if you bring people on board to your organization and you're not effective at training them, they will get frustrated. You will deal with more turnover than an organization that commits to a good, solid training program out there. We're most of the people, I think everybody on the phone today or everybody on the call today is in the world of IT. We're always talking about bits and bytes and barcode scanners and labels and that sort of thing. And there's this overlying concept of digital transformation, right? It's kind of a catchphrase that was invented or created probably by some consultant that made a lot of money creating that catchphrase. So, from an operations standpoint, if I'm talking with a VP of operations or a COO, how do I go about evaluating digital transformation projects, whether it is leveraging existing technology that I currently have and making better use of it, or evaluating new technologies? How do I go through that? And so, helping them with a process to help them understand how do I actually adopt digital transformation is really important. That's a big part. I feel it's a big part of our role as a provider to them. And we help guide them through that with lots of different tools. But fundamentally, it all lies under this umbrella of what we call PPT. And so when we're talking to people about technology and we're talking to them about their business, our first conversations have to be about their business processes, workflows. What are you doing? And kind of why do you do what you do every day? That's the first part of the conversation. The second part of the conversation really needs to be around the people that are involved with those business processes. So that's the second P in that acronym. And then last but not least, we'll talk to them about the technology. Too often we get on webinars like this, or we get in a phone call with somebody, or we go to a trade show, or we're on a sales meeting. Either somebody calling on me to sell me technology, or me working with one of our team members out there. And we want to talk about all the bits and the bytes and the winky lights and the whiz bang stuff. And fundamentally, you got to do the easy things easy, right? Let's talk about your business first. Let's talk about the people involved with your business, both internal to your organization as well as your customer. And then we'll talk to you about the technology, right? And when I talk about people, right, if we collectively do our job, the folks at Barcoding, the folks at Zebra, the folks at Ingram, do our job the best for our customer, what happens is our customer's customer has a great experience, right? And so we're very disciplined about going through the PPT to make sure that we're not just throwing technology out there for technology's sake, but let's make sure that it's solving a business problem, make sure that it's appropriate for the people that are involved with that process, and then the technology comes last. It's really important. It's got to work. It's got to be supportable. It's got to be deployed correctly. It's got to be supported correctly, but it really comes last after the process of the people. The other people that we deal with on a regular basis, I do this internally as well as externally with clients. It's always talking to the finance people, right? There's a rule of thumb, and in case you can't tell, I'm fairly simple-minded, but cash is king, and that's the bottom line. And it's not about being greedy, but cash fuels a business. And so, given the world today and the bumps that we've had with the corona response and the amount of money that's being spent around solving this and the impacts it's had to varying kinds of businesses, both positive and negative, managing cash is tough. It's tougher today, I think, in 2020 than it's been over the last 10 years. And it's pure speculation on my part. But for those folks on the webinar with us today, don't be surprised if managing cash over the next 2 to 3 years, as we go through a recovery from this process we've been through over the past year, isn't really tough, right? I think credit's going to tighten up a bit out there, right? So the Fed's done a great job of kind of turning the spigot on, and lending institutions and financial institutions have done a good job about being loose, but at some point you got to pay the piper, and there's no free lunch and every other cliche I could throw out there, right? So cash is king. And so when we talk with finance people, they're like, great, digital transformation, you're going to have this, sales knuckleheads always want to talk about ROIs, and this thing's going to pay for itself in 2 months and all that nonsense that goes on out there. Sometimes it's true. But they want their cash flows and their investments to be much more predictable, right? And so what we're having more and more conversations with the finance people around is, and it's something that I'm doing internally within our organization, the US and Canadian operations both, is to do things more as a service, right? And people think of it as, it's just leasing. Well, it's not leasing, right? When I look at providing laptops to all of our employees within the Barcoding family, whether it's the US and Canada, I want that expense to be predictable. I want to know what that thing's going to cost me on an annual basis. So if Matt Cunningham, eats a donut, has some grease on his hands, and drops his PC, all of a sudden it's a couple $1,000 for another PC. So more and more solutions are being provided on an as-a-service basis, right? It makes it much more predictable. It also makes it, if you're doing digital transformation, it's not a one-time event. And I talk to people about this. And digital transformation is not a destination, it's a journey. And I'll show my age here, but it's really, once you invest in digital transformation within your organization, if you're going to continue to receive the benefits that you thought you were going to receive as part of that project or part of that initiative, it's an ongoing process. You constantly have to reinvest, reevaluate, measure efficacy of the investments that you're making. And as a service models for adopting technology allow you to stay current. It was probably the bigger factor for me in terms of just internally the technology we use, whether it's video conferencing or laptops for people or other types of technology. It's really important to us as an organization and to me personally that we stay current with the technology. So in the simplest case, if you have a salesperson out there in front of a client talking about some new whiz-bang technology, and they're using a 10-year-old laptop that you kind of got to wind up to get going, well, you might be sending the wrong message, right? That's part of it. The other piece of it is, if I want my people to be efficient, I need to make sure they have the latest tools, using the best techniques to get the most out of that investment that we've made out there, right? So as we talk to the finance people, we talk to them about cash is king, making sure we're doing the right investments for the right reasons, but also talking about how they actually acquire technology. Are they CapEx models? Are they OpEx models? Do we do some other sort of financing to make sure that we're aligning the cash outlay with the benefit they're receiving? All right, so I hope that makes sense, right? And then from an IT standpoint, certainly we spend a lot of time within that world. IT people out there today, there's lots of things that they worry about, and for good reason, right? Security is probably top of the list, right? We certainly see it here. I live in Baltimore, the Baltimore area. The city of Baltimore was hit with a ransomware 8 months ago, right? Shut the city down. One of our local hospitals, Greater Baltimore Medical Center, GBMC, just got shut down this week with a ransomware. The county of Baltimore County, which is a separate entity from Baltimore City, got shut down a few months ago. And so don't think that these things just happen in Maryland. They happen everywhere, right? They're happening in every state in the United States. They're happening in every province in Canada. And if it hasn't happened yet, it's going to, right? And so these are the things that keep CIOs, I won't say up at night, right? That's just another cliche to throw out there. But that's certainly something that's front and center in terms of things that they're thinking about. How do I make sure that my platforms are secure so that my systems are available to support that mission that we're on, whether it's a city or county or a hospital, or it's a 3PL out there. It's vital that we've got good security around everything, right? And, how do I stay current? How do I keep current with the pace of change that's going on out there? It doesn't take long. One of the journals, I read the Wall Street Journal, or at least peruse it in the morning. Every day on the tech site, there's a new set of technology coming, right? Or people are leveraging technology a little bit different. I don't think there's anything new about CIOs or the IT groups having to review new technologies. I think that the pace is faster than ever, right? Innovation isn't coming in waves of quarterly or semi-annual cycles. They're coming on a weekly basis, right? So it's a lot to ingest as a leader in the IT space. And then they also have to think about how do I support my customers, right? The best CIOs that I've ever dealt with, the best IT people that I've ever dealt with, have that viewpoint that their customer is the finance group, or is the operations group, or God forbid the sales group or the marketing group, right? And so how do they make sure that those groups are secure, that they're getting the tools they need to be the best they can possibly be? Man, was that a long answer, Matt? I'm sorry.
Great insight, Shane. I think you're hitting upon a lot of things that I think companies today are trying to get their head around. You kind of framed out for everybody kind of how you thought about it from the barcoding perspective as being the president of barcoding. How do you think companies should start looking at addressing some of this? How do they move forward or transform from where they've been, in the past or currently today to moving forward in the future to be able to tackle on some of the, the digital transformation and things that are top of mind for organizations today?
Yeah. So, I think that organizations, and it's a bit self-serving, but because it's the process that I personally use, and it's the process we use as an organization, is to put the digital transformation last, right? And so that doesn't mean that people shouldn't do these projects, but if they're evaluating digital transformation, they say, geez, if we can do digital transformation, it'll make a huge difference in our warehouse, right? Fine. But let's take a look at the business processes that are going on out there. Let's look at the people that are engaged with it out there. And then we'll talk about the technology. Don't start with the technology sort of a thing. We see that, many of our clients over the past 2 to 3 years and over the next year or two will be making this major shift from kind of a Microsoft Windows mobile type of technology out there in their warehousing environments, for example, or their retail store, to an Android platform, right? And many of us are familiar with Android or iOS. They fundamentally, the guys from Apple, the guys from Google would scream if they heard me say that, but they're fundamentally the same, right? It's kind of that smartphone technology. It's a single pane of glass that does lots of stuff for you, right? I can pick up my phone, I can make an airline reservation. I can look at a video of my kid playing baseball. I can, make a reservation at a restaurant. I could be talking to somebody, communicating with somebody on my team or a family member, all at the same time with one single device, right? The number one thing I would recommend is to put it down every now and then, right? Don't make this part of your being. And so as our clients are going through that, I'll go to a warehouse and show my age just a little bit, but again, you go to a warehouse 10 years ago and you'd see warehouse workers out there and it looked like Batman, right? They had a wearable on their arm, they had a scanner in their hand, they had a two-way radio on their belt, and maybe a time card or something else stuck in their back pocket. Well, the reality is in today's world with Android, that operating platform allows them to condense all of that functionality into a single pane of glass, a single device, if you will. And so, as I evaluate my business processes going out there, look at the different sets of technologies that you're currently using to solve your business process or add efficiency or effectiveness to your business process, and determine what can I put on that single pane of glass? What can I put on that one operating system to do all of these things? The other piece you'll find about that is that, if I can get it all in one spot and I can make a singular investment, well, maybe now I can extend that technology down to more of the people within the organization, right? Some of the major retailers, we work with some of the largest retailers in the United States, and contrary to what you might read in the newspaper or see on social media, retail's alive and well, right? Amazon's doing great, but people are going into stores, people are doing buy online, pick up in store, people are doing curbside delivery, and these major retailers we're using are leveraging these devices, maybe not this device, right? It's an Android device, it's not a Zebra, but they're leveraging Zebra devices to help facilitate a brand new business process that they had to create over the last 6 months in order to adjust to this new operating environment that we face because of the corona response, right? And what they all tell us is the same thing. Typically, we'll time warp back to November or December of 2019. If you walked into a store and if that store was staffed with 100 associates, right? Kind of a big box store is staffed with 100 associates. You might see the people at the front end, right? 20 people in the kind of the checkout line, if you will, that had POS systems that they were dealing with. So you had 80 people left. And of those 80 people left, people doing the merchandising or the stocking or the returns of things, maybe 20 of those people had technology with them, right? A device with them. Maybe another half of them would have a two-way radio as well, right? Every major retailer we work with today wants the same thing. When you go into that store, right, and in 2021, we're going to walk back into stores and actually shop and do commerce like we used to, right? I don't think it'll all go quite completely back, but, it's not a forever thing. Their whole concept is they want to put technology down at the edge on every single one of those employees. Not for technology's sake, right? But they want that employee to be integrated with every system that retailer has that they've spent millions of dollars on to deliver a great customer experience to that customer, right? They don't want me to go in and find Matt standing in the back by the towels and Matt to say, oh, let me find somebody with a handheld, right? They want to be able to do that, and they want to be able to communicate, right? We can see Matt's got his earphones in today, but they want all these employees, all these associates to be connected all the time, delivering the best possible customer experience they can by leveraging the technology on the device that they have with them. And they don't want that associate to walk around with 2 or 3 or 4 different devices. I've literally heard CIOs from some of the largest retailers in America talk about the concept of I've got to get rid of the Batman belt, right? I can't have like the little thing that will jump on top of the building and all the other things that Batman could do with all the stuff on his belt. They just want a singular device, right? And the new technologies can help us get there because it's much more powerful, much more flexible, much easier in terms of training times to get associates up and running with it, right?
Great stuff, Shane. I think this is a great segue for us to bring on Dina Self, who is a technology consultant and strategist for Zebra Technologies. And Dina, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. And Shane, great insights into all the different things that the market is looking to invest in and to problem solve throughout the course of, like you said, digital transformation and many other things that can be benefited from adoption around this type of initiative. And so with that, Dina Self, if you could just share with us from a Zebra perspective, what's your kind of role and responsibility within Zebra today, and kind of explain to us how Zebra is investing and leading in the supply chain today.
Sure. So first off, man, listening to Shane, I think we could probably all have listened to him this entire hour. Very insightful stuff, and would love to continue the conversation sometime. But as for me in my role here at Zebra, I feel like in one aspect, I spend a fair amount of time learning a lot about what's happening in the industry. It includes learning what customers are facing today, what's happening in the market, what the future is shaping up to be from both a market and a technology standpoint, as well as maybe identifying some of the opportunities within our own portfolio where maybe Zebra should play or invest. And then on the flip side, I get to spend a lot of time sharing that knowledge that I'm gaining with, with you guys and other people who are in the industry, but really more importantly, I get to share that information with our customers. And, kind of a lot of what Shane had said, was really, trying to get to the root of what those pain points are, and then help them by identifying some of those right solutions that can address those. I would say in terms of how Zebra is investing and leading in supply chain today, we do it a couple of different ways. I think it's both organically and also inorganically. And what we really do is, first off, we kind of start by trying to understand the challenges that our customers have and analyze those pain points. And it's kind of cool because we have customers across the entire supply chain. So it really helps to provide us with this unique view in supporting those customers that are building the goods, and then they're storing them, and then they're delivering them, right? So from the first mile to the middle mile and even to that last mile, it really helps us and provides a lot of insight to help us prioritize, our efforts as well as our funding. I think maybe one example I would just share about that would be, like we recognize today that, Zebra, obviously, we have a lot of great solutions for empowering and mobilizing the worker, but we also know technology is evolving, and, in some cases that worker is going to be augmented or maybe even replaced by various forms of automation or AI. So, we're investing to develop solutions leveraging those type of technology sets. And then maybe lastly, I would just say, as some of those new areas, that I mentioned, AI, computer vision, machine learning, automation, robotics, the list goes on. But what we're doing is really trying to accelerate our ability to offer solutions. And we do that in 3 different ways, whether that be through investment, through partnership, or even through acquisition. And this really helps us to better serve our customers and assume a larger role in solving those problems, both now and also in the future.
So let's talk a little bit about manufacturing and warehousing. Where do you think companies are, concerned, and where are they putting some of that, thought around where they need to solve problems in these areas? And where can a company like Zebra really help them, make process improvements around these areas?
It's really kind of all over, the board, really kind of depending on the size of company that you are and what those operational opportunities are. I think Shane mentioned some of it, right? There's a lot that is happening right now from a labor workforce standpoint. So, what I'm seeing a lot of is customers are really trying to figure out how do we optimize that labor that we do have. With the pandemic, with the dramatic increase in e-com, it's doubled, and maybe even in some areas even tripled. So, it's put a big strain on our overall supply chain. So, those customers, like I said, they're saying, how do we be more efficient with this? And to be honest, there's really all kinds of solutions that can help with that, whether that be from maybe the onboarding and training aspect of it, or even in those typical day-to-day type of activities. But then we do see some of the larger customers, who are obviously more advanced. They're looking more into the automation, the location services. We're seeing some pilots more so this year, and you know, there's a strong belief that it's going to lead to a lot of implementations next year or so. So yeah, I would just say it really just kind of depends on where you're at in the scope and what are those type of issues you're really looking to address.
I understand Zebra's built a new warehouse maturity model. Can you kind of expand on that? It sounds like it's really going down the path of a smarter type of warehouse experience. You know, how are companies thinking about that today in terms of you know, what needs to be looked at, what needs to be invested in, and how do they ultimately get to where they need to go in terms of that vision?
Yeah, so you know, so first off, I kind of like to just think of it as, you know, almost a guide, right? There's a lot of customers, they ask us to come in and assess their operations. And one of the hard parts is really trying to really figure out, you know, where are they at? What are those pain points? Where are they looking to go? And so I like to describe it as kind of like a guide or a tool that really kind of helps to break up the digital journey into phases. It starts at a phase 0 and it progresses to a phase 5. I'll just speak to a super high level about it, but you know, if you guys want to learn more information about it, we're starting to introduce it. And we've got some information on our website as well, where you can go out and read some of the blog posts. I think the phase 3 was actually just released here recently. So go check it out on zebra.com. But at a high level, you know, you can maybe think of it like this is kind of like a phase 0 is really probably like a company that's operating on a legacy system. You know, they probably have an outdated operating system, and much of the data that they do have is going to be limited and siloed. And then as they move into that phase 1, you know, now they've made the leap over to Android OS, and they're really more so focused on increasing the individual worker productivity. And phase 2, you know, now you're essentially looking to be even more connected, where you're looking more at your overall team productivity and workflow conformity. And it just continues, you know, to progress throughout the model. So essentially what you're doing is, you know, you're adding in more layers of visibility, you're connecting that data, you're bringing in, you know, more location type services so that, you know, all your assets can really be connected. We like to kind of call it like the next best move, and this is really where you can anticipate and respond and you know, essentially truly maximize the efficiencies of all your assets. And then, you know, then you kind of get into the phase 5 where, you know, you're really talking more, you know, like more into robotics and things of that nature. And from an analytics perspective, you're really being more proactive and even prescriptive. So the model really just kind of takes you on a journey in terms of data, visibility, and productivity. And kind of the types of investments, or maybe what those technology disruptors may look like that support those areas. The main thing I like to just kind of call out when I do talk about the model, though, is, you know, the intent is not to say that, hey, every customer's end goal should be a phase 5, because it really shouldn't be. There's companies today that operate very successfully in a phase 1 or 2, and they have no need to, you know, to move out of that. But the nice thing about it is, you know, it is a tool that, you know, if in the future, you know, your demand or whatever changes, then it helps to kind of guide that conversation to really determine, you know, what that would mean for you.
So as companies try to leap into this, Dina, I mean, what's your advice on some of the, you know, pitfalls to avoid? How should companies, you know, engage either their own internal resources or look for, you know, companies like Zebra and Barcoding for that matter, and Ingram to help them, you know, go through this process?
You know, I'll probably share some learnings that I had with my previous company. So prior to coming to Zebra, I led an IT team for North America, an operations team. And they were on a legacy solution when I took over this group. And shortly before I left, we had migrated over to Android and adopted a new solution. I think some of the biggest learnings, you know, for me from that was, I would say number one, get out of the mindset that everything needs to be customized because your current business processes, may not work with a new solution. If you think about it, the reason your business processes are the way that they are today, it's because of what the technology was available at that time, right? Business processes, they compensate what technology can't support. So it's a really great opportunity, I think, for companies to kind of step back and take a look at everything and really rewrite that script. I think that they would be amazed at the amount of productivity gains and savings that they can have there. I would also say, don't sell yourself short. And what I mean by that is, I see a lot of companies, they really underestimate the opportunity that migrating, to Android provides. So I kind of like to think about it, just in terms of how I use my smartphone today. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of productivity it gives me, right? Because I have everything I need, essentially right there. And it's really no different, from a business aspect. You have the ability to have, all kinds of applications, at your fingertips. And, I think about a lot of those internal applications, especially for the frontline workers where, they don't have access to this. I've seen where, you have to pull these guys in, right, just to do something on their manager's laptop or bring them in for special meetings, or maybe you have to operate manually on paper or whatever, right, just to try to capture this information. And then, there's other things too that they can't do, maybe even from a compliance and an HR and all that standpoint. And it's just really cool because now you have the ability to really provide these tools for them, right? And it just creates such a better end user experience for them, and they get to be more connected with the company. And then the last thing, and I feel like that this is, I hear this from everybody, that is from a change management perspective, the overall change management and training aspect really tends to scare people away. And I would just say that, while it definitely shouldn't be underestimated, but there's really some amazing solutions that can help effectively deploy new solutions. There's been a lot of innovation in this area, and it's moved away from kind of that traditional boots on the ground to more of a virtual experience. And again, I'll share you when I was in my previous role. I leveraged this with a deployment that I was doing, and keep in mind, I was moving from legacy over to Android. So I was implementing, new hardware, new software, new business process. Like I had, the whole gamut really. I would tell you a standard change across our landscape of 4,500 end users, it would typically take 18 months to have fully deployed based off of our traditional method. And and now with the advancement just in from a training aspect, you can take that virtual. And the nice thing about it is, now the end user, they have the ability to actually take the training on the device that they're going to be using, right? When you actually go live, it's simulated. So they're walking through everything. They're getting extremely comfortable with it. And then on the back end, you're capturing a bunch of analytics. So you can really see, like, how are they progressing through this, right? Are they getting caught up somewhere? It identifies this type of stuff. So you can go and have that conversation and really try to figure out what's going on. And even in some cases, what we found was, maybe you have multiple employees who keep getting tripped up in this area, or why is it taking them so long to go from this screen to this screen? And what it allowed us to do was actually go back and make some enhancements to the solution. So, yeah, I would just say, maybe keep something like that in mind if you have a big concern from both a training and a change management aspect. It's a great way to go.
You recently joined Zebra, Dina, it sounds like within the last year. So, I mean, what excited you about coming to work for Zebra, and where do you see Zebra going beyond 2020? Sounds like there's amazing things that are being accomplished. I mean, I think, Zebra's been essential within the supply chain out in the market space as we've gone through this, coronavirus year. And where do you see after 2020 Zebra continuing to invest and continuing to innovate?
So first off, what attracted me was Zebra was actually one of my vendors. And I just love the way that they worked with me. They didn't show up to sell me, something. They showed up to help me talk through and solve my issues. And they really became a partner to me. And, I would say to the extent of even things that I knew Zebra didn't, have, didn't have a solution within their portfolio that could address what I was facing, but I knew that they had connections. And so it just became where I could even just pick up the phone and call my Zebra representative, and we could talk about it, and he could, be able to connect me to maybe some of the right players in the business to get some additional insight. So I would say just that approach of really wanting to truly solve the issue, that is definitely what attracted me to the company. In terms of Zebra, and where they're going, it's really hard to guess, but what I can tell you from my own personal experiences, obviously coming to Zebra is, I felt like that they were headed in the right direction, right? They're kind of living on that edge, and they're making right investments, and we know what are going to be technology disruptors in the future, right? And so they're playing with and exploring, various areas so that, that they can make sure that they are going to be ready to play when that time comes to implement some of those things. So, I would see us growing more in terms of analytics. I would see us growing more in automation, robotics, AI, machine vision. I think there's still a lot to come in those areas as well.
Great. Tina, I think I could talk with you all afternoon. So thank you so much for, providing some great insights around just the state of the market and supply chain, and especially around all things Zebra. So thank you for your insights today. Jody, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I think our next guest and speaker is going to be Carl Conley from Ingram. And Jody, take it away.
Thank you, Matt. Great work there on those first two interviews. Just some really great conversation. I can't wait to continue it. So Carl, welcome. For everyone who is out there watching and listening in, Carl Conley is Ingram Micro's Chief Technologist for their Enterprise Division. We're thrilled to have you here today. So like we've started with some of our other speakers, do you want to give maybe a quick intro to yourself, your role, and maybe what Ingram Micro in particular, the role that they play in our ecosystem?
Sure. Thanks, Jody. Thanks for having me today. Really happy to have the opportunity to speak to you, Barcode, and all your guests. So hope everybody's doing well and staying safe. So my name is Carl Conley. I am the Chief Technologist for Ingram Micro's Enterprise Division. I've been at Ingram now just going over 2 years. Prior to being at Ingram, though, I spent 17 years at EMC Corporation in Massachusetts, where I live. Spent a lot of time as a hardware software engineer, moved into acquisitions. While I was in acquisitions, I actually had the opportunity to go back to school part-time. So passed the Massachusetts bar. I'm a licensed attorney in Massachusetts. So my role inside of Ingram really kind of serves two functions. I sort of try to help our partners understand the full complement of what Ingram Micro can bring. Many of the people on this webinar may think of us as a logistics company, which is very true, but we also have a plethora of other high-value services in cloud and security and analytics and business intelligence. And so my role as the technologist is to help our teams articulate our value prop and ensure that our partners can leverage us to the fullest of their capabilities.
Well, that's awesome. I actually didn't know that about your various expertise levels. That's really cool. And we're happy to have you here and learn a little bit more. So, of course, again, goes without saying, right? This has been quite the year. I know I've gotten to the point where I just say hashtag 2020 and everyone knows what we're talking about. But many organizations, right, they've had to adapt super quick, and they've actually ramped up on their digital transformation initiatives just out of necessity, right? So some increased demand or, unfortunately on the other side. So what are you in particular seeing in terms of this adoption for edge technologies or hybrid style solutions? What's going on out there?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, we're seeing a lot of change, just like everybody else. When I first came into the organization, I had come from a technology company that was really on the bleeding edge of virtualization. And so we had been actually preaching digital transformation for probably about 8 years, a long time ago, right? Got to the point where we were actually kind of getting sick of the term. We moved in our team, we launched the first hyper-converged platform that EMC ever launched. So that was a big change from traditional infrastructure down to a consolidated platform. So when I came into Ingram then, I was really pleasantly surprised inside of our organization. We have a lot of capabilities. And over the past year, we've really been focused on, I'd say, 4 things that will carry on into next year. I'd say the first thing is really the rise, and I think it was brought up by Shane, of the as a service industry. Clearly, the market has changed, and the way that end customers want to consume technology is just like we all do. Like we consume our electricity, we want to consume it as a service. We only want to pay for what we use. And that gives us the flexibility then to move around and shop around and and avoid lock-in and the like. So the as a service industry, as we see it, is going to continue to rise. And Ingram's really well positioned to help our partners and their end customers consume technology that way. We have, for example, the largest online marketplace whereby a partner can actually resell a whole plethora of very in-demand services, ISV technology like Microsoft 365, Dropbox, and security products and the like. So that's the way we see things going with respect to consumption. The same is true for infrastructure. If you want to purchase, your cloud infrastructure, you can do that now. And partners have the opportunity to actually bundle the technology in ways that make sense and do it through our infrastructure such that they don't have to put down a lot of cash. They can leverage a turnkey solution that has all of the single billing, which is incredibly difficult to do, the support, and the contracts in place. Following along with the as a service theme, Ingram Micro also has onboarded a whole plethora of security as a service. And this is a big area. We're all suffering the outfall of the rise of cyber attacks. And I think Shane brought it in there where ransomware is rampant. This year, obviously, seen a huge shift where everybody had to support work from home initiatives. And that's all well and good, but for the security teams, it put a huge burden on them in the sense that they were just struggling to rapidly solve for that shift beyond the pale, if you will, beyond the corporate firewall. And of course, when everybody had to work from home, there was a huge demand put on for client devices, and therefore organizations had to kind of add in bring your own devices all of a sudden. And of course, the cyber criminals are out there waiting to take advantage of that. So that's a trend that we will see and continues to rise. And as a result, we've added actually a whole slew of as a service, security as a service. Well, they'll actually do the monitoring for organizations and fulfill that need, which is really, really important, because one of the things, Jody, that we're seeing in the security space specifically, those who are tasked with securing the infrastructure and the endpoint and the devices, which, as you know, is growing, they suffer a little bit from alert fatigue and the like. So if an organization can offload that to a third party, they can take advantage of, machine learning, automation, economies of scale, and really augment their security teams. And you brought up another point. One of the other things that we're seeing is the pendulum swinging, if you will. Everybody moved from on-prem to cloud, and now there's another pendulum swinging more out to the edge. And in fact, I read an article the other day that said 90% of all the data in an enterprise will be created either in the cloud or at the edge in the next 2 years. So clearly, our partners are asking us to help them understand how they can fulfill the needs of their end customers who want to actually consume the data where it's actually being created. That's the whole impetus of moving out to the edge, to be able to leverage the data in real time to process it, to run analytics out there, and not have to traverse a network to the cloud, which gets very expensive. So that's a big rise. And that's basically going to be empowered by the next wave of the air interface, which is 5G. And one of my roles inside of Ingram is to work with our partners, our technology alliance partners, to develop strategy. And so I'm working very closely with some of the major carriers that you'll be familiar with here in the US to develop what we're calling a 5G roadshow. And this may be interesting to many of your users or your listeners today. We're hearing a lot about 5G, and we've been bombarded by the messaging, right? And I think in part due to the release of this little handy thing, the iPhone, the latest version, which supports 5G, everybody's talking about 5G. The problem is there's so much so much fiction, right? And we're trying to help our partners understand how do they separate fact from fiction. So the best way to do that, as we saw fit, was to actually create what we're calling a virtual roadshow. So much like this forum that we're having today, starting in January, we're going to be releasing an educational session basically for our partners, and they can invite their end customers, where over the course of about 90 minutes to 2 hours, we will walk them through everything they need to know about 5G, from the spectrum, the use cases, the technology. 5G is really a platform more so than just a series of spectrum. What they need to have in place from a business perspective. What are the real use cases that they can actually leverage it for, as opposed to those aspirational things like remote surgeries and autonomous vehicles? What are the things they can do in 2021 to be successful, and so on and so forth? So that's pretty exciting. And I'd say the last thing, Jody, that was kind of touched on in roundabout ways by others today, is the security aspect. We're seeing a massive trend, as is most of the analysts, is that the world of cybersecurity and network is finally fusing. Because if you think about it now, everything is connected by the network. All the devices are at different endpoints, and it's so distributed. The glue of all of that is the network. And therefore, in order to really implement security, you have to start with the network. And this is a concept called secure access, secure edge. So Ingram Micro is investing heavily to help our partners understand what that is and what the benefits are. And the benefits are many. I touched on the fatigue of many organizations where they're always chasing their tail in security. They're always buying the next product to stay ahead of the next threat. Or you hear about someone, as was mentioned by Shane, the hospital, I think, it got hit by ransomware. It's massive, it's everywhere. And therefore, we're trying to help our partners, help their end customers by simplifying their security deployments, by consolidating. And I think that's the way forward. So we've got a lot of pokers in the fire, if you will, and no end of work, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, well, obviously, I'm sure everyone listening in can tell that you guys are a great partner and a critical part of our kind of ecosystem that we bring to the table. So thank you for that. And when you mentioned cloud, I kind of giggled because, you know, right now this recording is actually being recorded up into the cloud. So there you go, a real life example right in front of your eyes. So I want to talk, I'm going to expand upon a little bit your conversation that you started around 5G. I do think that there's a lot of, it's hard to parse through it. It's hard to know how to prepare, what the real disruption is going to be, what the real opportunities are going to be. I'm assuming, you know, just kind of being a little bit, this is more about our future here on this call, you know, that's going to be a major driver of IoT style solutions and applications. Do you want to talk a little bit about that connection between 5G and IoT?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad you brought that up because, and it's great that Zebra's on this call as well, because part of my role is to help our partners understand the potential of technology. And we have an IoT business unit inside of Ingram that's been in existence now for about 3 years. And we're really happy. Well, prior to COVID, we were going to open a center of excellence in Irvine, California, where we actually showcase a lot of the technologies. And that gives us the opportunity to actually invite partners in, and sometimes they can bring their end customers into a state-of-the-art facility where they can actually see the technology and IoT deployed. And of course, IoT is nothing without the network. And so the network becomes critical. And with respect to 5G, while 4G LTE is pretty powerful in its own right, and certainly has a lot of the throughput that IoT solutions need today. What 5G is going to enable with respect to IoT is really low latency, but more importantly, reliability. I think that's the real key distinguishing attribute, if you will, between 5G and 4G LTE. Aside from speed and bandwidth and the amount of devices that it can actually support, the reliability is key. And that's where new use cases will evolve. So think about today, if you're scanning products with a camera, with the low latency that you can get with 5G, it's going to enable the camera to actually take corrective action and see things and augment processes on the fly. Another use for 5G is, is in the smart buildings and smart solutions. That's going to become ubiquitous. And that's simply just through volume. But really, I think when we think about 5G and think about IoT, it's really about reliability and what it brings. Some of the things that we've been doing with Zebra for in and around the IoT space has been around patient tracking and asset tracking. And what 5G will enable in the healthcare setting is private networks. So in addition to the public network that we all have, many organizations are actually going to employ 5G as a private network. That means they have their own 5G infrastructure. That way they get low latency, there's no sharing, and they're highly secured. So in the healthcare setting, some of the solutions, as I mentioned, around IoT have been patient tracking. And Zebra have a great solution with one of their partner, Tagnos, where they can actually give barcoded bracelets to the patient's experience. Then they come in, they get checked in. And as they're moved through the process, different entities within inside the hospital are notified. So for example, in the COVID era where cleanliness is tantamount, these patients, as they move from one room to the next, they can use the barcode encoded bracelet to actually notify a system, which then sends the appropriate staff. But when you think about beyond just the RFID and the barcode and the infrastructure, to enable the staff to be more efficient, they're all going to be on wireless devices. And that wireless device in a highly secured HIPAA compliant environment needs to be 5G. And so there's a lot of opportunity in that space, and we're seeing that snowball over time. And as part of our role inside of our IoT portfolio, we're going to be helping our partners understand where they might want to employ 5G. Now, it's not going to be overnight, Jody, and I'm not saying that 4G today doesn't suffice. There's going to be an extended period over the next few years where those two technologies will exist together. It's just when new organizations are looking at a way to untether themselves, they're typically looking at 5G because it will provide them a lot more flexibility to do that.
We have a question actually that came in, perfect timing on our conversation. So the question is, do you see 5G replacing traditional Wi-Fi within the four walls?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's often a debate between Wi-Fi 6, which is the next standard of Wi-Fi, which has pretty good speed and throughput, and where you would use 5G. I think they're going to coexist. The thing about 5G replacing Wi-Fi, where it would replace Wi-Fi would be in larger venues where there's a high volume of people or devices consuming. And Wi-Fi 6 certainly has the capability to add more devices, but when you look at the latency, when you add more devices or more users, that's where it tends to drop off. 5G also gives you the opportunity to do some things above and beyond what Wi-Fi 6 can do, such as network slicing, whereby if you're in an enterprise or a large organization and you want to dedicate a slice of your spectrum to a specific application such that you can ensure the service level agreement and that device, and that always has very low latency, that's where 5G would probably come in to be, or be more predominant over Wi-Fi. And in our environment, I'll give you a real world example. In our warehouses right now, we're going through, as Shane said, our own digital transformation, where the where the warehouses have these smart carts, and as you can imagine, Ingram's a very large distribution organization as well. I think we've got 130 distribution centers globally. One of the challenges with these smart carts with Wi-Fi is it's a shared spectrum to a certain extent, and therefore, when you're moving the cart around and you're needing a quality of signal, it's competing with the end users who are on their own on the Wi-Fi network, or the TV in the lobby or whatever. So you don't have the quality of signal that you would have with a private 5G. So when it comes to reliability and scale and throughput and the ability to slice, I would say 5G will probably win out. And where you see more like the Industry 4.0, those larger factories, especially the car manufacturing or anything that needs robotics, the question often comes, will Wi-Fi 6 suffice? Not really, because you don't have that really sub-millisecond latency reliability that 5G enables. So it depends on the setting and it depends on the use case. But I think over the course of time, private 5G may win out.
Awesome. No, that's excellent. And I think something that probably all of us are thinking on the phone is that there is a lot to determining what the right path forward is. And it's kind of the reason why companies like us exist and why we have such great partnerships, because you can't just think about a piece of technology without also thinking about the connection layer, without also thinking about your users, without thinking about business cases. And once you start to think about all those items, it gets pretty complex pretty fast.
It is, Jody. It's absolutely critical. One of the things that I've been involved with inside of Ingram is helping our partners really understand IoT, as I mentioned. We have what we call the practice builder approach inside of Ingram that helps our partners really do that, build a practice around a certain thing. We have it for security, we have it for cloud, we have it for digital transformation, and we have it for IoT. And one of the things I see constantly is that people think about the technology very quickly and they think about the use case, but they don't think about the connectivity, or they just think of it as a commodity and they always leave it till the end, where it really should be upfront. The first thing that you think about is like, how am I going to connect all of this? And it sounds idiotic, but it often happens. So yeah.
It actually doesn't, because often we abide by Simon Sinek's start with why. And sometimes you forget to ask some of the more basic questions when you get.
It's true. Yeah. It's all about planning, right? You really need to just have a really concrete plan with key KPIs to ensure that you're keeping on track and that you're checking all the right boxes. I will say though, there is sort of a movement afoot, and there is technology called Passport where it exists, whereby there is a sort of handover between cellular and Wi-Fi 6. They have kind of the same 5G and Wi-Fi 6 have a kind of underlying same foundation, if you will. That is, most of it is software defined. And that way you can actually do a seamless handover from coming from cellular to Wi-Fi. So you may have a hybrid situation and you can reap the benefits of both worlds, I guess. Wi-Fi is probably a lot easier to set up and people are very accustomed to it. Cellular, well, 4G is kind of proprietary. 5G is more of an open standard. So I think more partners will be able to play in that space. And you're seeing major technology companies like AWS and Microsoft team up with the carriers to offer 5G as a service. So much more cloud centric, which fits a lot of the business models that many of our partners have been sort of moving towards anyway. And that's one of the things we're really focused on, is helping our partners, what we call make the pivot. Making the pivot really is transforming your business from point product sales, the way things were bought in the past, to that as a service model. And one of the things many of the people on the phone may not be aware of, Ingram also has a very large financial services wing. And I know Shane brought this up, how critical it is today. When a company is making the transition from the traditional sales model to the annuity based, there's a period of time where they're sort of playing catch up, right? They're not getting those big deals up front. They're getting it paid monthly, which is nice. It's the gift that keeps on giving. But there's a period of time where they still have to meet payroll and all of those other expenses. And so what Ingram does is we have financial programs and vehicles in place that help them make the pivot, is what we call it. We can fund those contracts up front and pay them outright like in a traditional model, which is pretty unique in the industry, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and it's something that I know that 2021 will just see more and more. In order to keep pace, right? You need the financial structure to match.
Absolutely. It's critical.
Yes. Well, this has been incredible. I think this has been a really great conversation. I want to finish with you, Carl, with one final conversation, really coming back to the real immediate short term. So looking just at next year, 2021, maybe either talk through what companies can do to kind of prep and prepare, or what you see as a kind of a vital opportunity that's going to show itself within the space of 1 year.
Yeah. So let's see. I think really and truly what we're seeing is a mass adoption of cloud, and that's going to continue. It's certainly not letting up. And I think a lot of organizations have realized that they have risk with on-prem equipment, especially in the year that we've just had with COVID, where staff couldn't actually come to the facilities and whatnot. So I think partners really, as Shane said, need to evaluate the digital transformation journey that they want to take. And I would agree with him wholeheartedly. Don't start with the technology. That should not be the overall driver. I would say really try to formulate a plan. And this sounds rudimentary, but it's essential. You need to identify, an owner of that plan, and that person would have to be a real advocate for change. You should implement KPIs where you're keeping in track and, there's accountability. And then last but not least, the technology should be an enabler of the plan. So I would say, the adoption of cloud is going to continue, and therefore organizations should evaluate what their cloud strategy is. But more importantly, when you do get into adopting cloud, make sure that you put the right safeguards in place. And this is important. I think using partners such as yourself can help organizations, realize the true benefit of cloud, because a lot of organizations tend to move to cloud quickly and they lift and shift. That's taking existing processes and technologies and putting them into cloud. And that's not going to realize the cost savings of cloud. The biggest challenges with cloud are idle resources and oversubscribed resources. So make sure that as you go in your digital transformation and you adopt cloud, that you have the right processes in place to ensure that you get the best bang for your buck and you're not shocked at the end of the month when you get that cloud bill.
Love it. All right. Well, I'm going to invite Dina, Matt. I don't think Shane actually had to jump for another call, but Dina and Matt, if you want to jump back on camera, I wanted to end today's conversation with, and Dina, if you're not there, it's okay too. Oh, no, you're there. I didn't tell them this, so I'm like going rogue on them. So
I know.
I loved today's conversation. I loved how everything kind of started to, obviously there's great synergy between our companies, and it's really nice to see everybody kind of on the same page and talking about similar trends that they're seeing in the industry. What I always like to end with is kind of that final wrap up, that last piece of advice or that last word that you want to get in there to the audience, and just kind of leave them with those last little nuggets. So Matt, I guess I'll have you sub in for Shane, but that final thought, that final last word that you kind of want the audience to remember after today, based on what you've heard.
Shane said it. I think he was spot on. Do the easy things easy. And then Carl expanded on it. Just have a plan, right? And, get your stakeholders involved in the plan, and, have the business outcomes that you want from a vision standpoint laid out, and, go through that process and find out, where your stakeholders in your organization can accomplish some of these. When you don't feel like you have in-house capabilities, reach out to competent companies that are focused in on this, and ask for help, because I think there's a lot of great talent out in the marketplace today. and they're willing to help in any way they can. And I think there's a way to, achieve the vision by having a well, documented plan that everybody's on the same page. So do the easy things easy, start with a plan.
Love it. Dina, any last words you want to get in there?
Oh gosh, there's so much advice I would give. I loved everything that Shane was talking about. But what I really liked was just him really kind of more so being authentic with the customer, right? And having those deeper conversations, truly understand, where those pain points are and get to the root and address those. I see a lot of times people come in, they throw product, right? And it's the wrong way to go. I would say make those meaningful conversations. There's so much low hanging fruit too. Like you don't always have to, raise the bar really high and just going after that low hanging fruit. It's really going to help you to establish deeper, stronger relationships and partnerships with your customers. And you're only going to increase on that. So yeah, I'll hold the rest for now for another conversation, but.
Love it. Thank you. And Carl, what are your final words of advice?
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of echo what Matt said. Look, the way technology is evolving is incredibly fast, and the pace of change is evolving incredibly fast as well. And it's difficult. We understand that. But you should know that behind Barcoding and behind Zebra is an Ingram, and we're the largest global distributor of technology in the world. We have a lot of capabilities. Don't be afraid to reach out to your partner and tap that resource. That's what we're here for. And we're more than willing to help you in any capacity that we can and help our partners be successful. Just don't be afraid to reach out, no matter what.
I love it. Well, if we were,
Awesome.
I would give you a big round of applause. So if you're in the audience, go ahead and start clapping, give yourself a round of applause. We really appreciate you being here. So thank you, Carl. Thank you so much, Dina. Thank you, Matt. Barcoding, obviously, we are here to help. I think that's my final words that I'd like the group to remember. You can reach out to us on our website, barcoding.com. We also have a Canadian operations. So if for our folks in the call who are in the Canadian market, please feel free to reach out to Barcoding Canada directly. And really, honestly, it can't be said enough that there is a lot of complexity out there. There's a lot of opportunity. I think that's that low-hanging fruit. There's lots of ways to make incremental process improvement. I think what we truly believe in is continuous improvement. So all the way back to Shane's original comment that digital transformation is not a destination, but it is a journey, and it is something that we see as ongoing. So our work is never done, which is good, I guess, for all of us. So I'll leave you with that. Feel free to ask us additional questions. The chat was a bit quiet today. So if you need to reach out to me directly, I can put you in touch with whomever you need, but we would love to hear from you. With that, have a great holiday season. Stay safe and well out there. We really appreciate it, and wishing you all the best. Thank you, guys.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.